Hello, this is John. This is WAWTAR. This is WAWTAR Conversations with Graham Pardun, a poet that, Paul Kingsnorth, Martin Shaw, and others, including Rod Dreher, call one of the most important poets of our current moment. This is Graham Pardun, author of Sunlilies, and this is one of our conversations on WAWTAR. But first, Greg Gilbertson and the gang up in Wisconsin singing and bringing you in with some Gagi Marjos on WAWTAR. Graham, we met in Minnesota, then we talked, and then I found out you had this great book and that you're kind of famous in your basement. Tell us about the Sunlilies and maybe 2 seconds about yourself. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's only going to take 2 seconds to explain myself. Famous in my basement. I think you just explained it right there. My Substack profile is just some kumbaya American nothing poet. Yeah. I think that sums it up. I've just been writing alone for 20 years, and it's all been garbage. And about a year ago, finally got to the point where it stopped being garbage.
Yeah, it's not garbage.
Took a lot of garbage to get there, though. And you mentioned, Rod Dreher read it and went nuts about it, which I appreciate. I think he read it, the whole thing, like 3 a.m. And you know how Rod gets excited about something. So it struck him at the right time and he got excited about it.
Well, and because it's a crazy, honest, poetic, not really a memoir, but it's like you take us along for a walk about what it means to be in touch with something like the spirit world. It's pretty cool. And clearly using you're flexing on orthodoxy. And as a convert, there's something really resonant about it. Even though, how long ago did you convert to orthodoxy?
Well, on paper, 12 years ago. I would say I'm still converting to orthodoxy. I converted to orthodoxy 12 years ago, and it's taken me at least 10 years to really convert. So I think the book came out of a long period of struggle for me. And one of the things I wanted to do with it is express in language that makes sense to my own heart.
Yeah, that's right. That's how it feels.
Yeah, and I didn't expect anyone to read it. My goal was to say to myself what I needed to hear to keep me in orthodoxy.
Right.
I went through this pretty typical. We were talking about ortho bros. I was, probably still am, one of those. It's all in my head, and that kind of cerebral relationship with orthodoxy, plus my poetic romanticizing tendencies. I think I was just in and out, up and down all the time. And I would get these little glimpses of insight and I would come back, and I wanted to kind of tie myself down with a small bit of writing that came from my own heart, from my own experience. So that's where it came out of. And I think that's why it has resonated with a lot of people kind of in a similar boat.
Well, one of the people on our board read it, said, how have you not already called him up? The book does something to the personal of our being, the personal aspects of our being. It's like super honest. Didn't Kingsnorth also recommend your Substack too? In other words, whatever it is to be a writer, it seems like that's what you are. So tell me what it is to be a writer and an ortho bro. And for people who aren't Orthodox, maybe we need to define ortho bro, because it has legs in this internet corner of the world. How would you define it?
Well, when we were talking earlier, you were talking about, um, we met in the church in Minneapolis, and you talked in your last conversation with your brother about this thing that happens, which is, a bunch of dudes surround you and they're excited about your show and what you're doing online. And but what I got from that is you're talking about a lot of times it's very, up in the head. And there's this kind of yeah, I mean, it's cool to be Orthodox. You grow a beard. Your beard's awesome. My beard's awesome. It's like
Your
you start
beard's
getting in.
better than my beard. By
My
the way,
beard looks
both of
better.
our beards are way better than my brother's beard. Like, that's not even
That's
a
true.
beard. What is that
Yeah,
thing? Lord,
that's true. That's true.
it's a tough beard.
But there's things you get to do when you convert to Orthodoxy, and you're excited about them, and you're kind of in this new cultural world that is easy to be enthusiastic about, and it's a place where you can bro out with other bros about it.
And
But
what's the? I mean, I think I was in the same space. What's the excitement about? To me, it's about something like becoming, like, it's like joining up for something. It's like when you were 12 and you made the, basketball team. There's like, now you have to like weigh in and put your oar in. That's what happened to me. It's like, it's not a bad thing. It's like, oh, that guy knows what we're about to go through. And I don't know. That's how I see the ortho bro community as being a bunch of men who want to do something together. Does that resonate with you?
yeah, I mean, my religious background is very cerebral. I grew up Calvinist. You've got all these ideas, and the context of those ideas is largely you're in a space that looks more or less like an office building, and there's a guy in a suit,
Right.
talking about these ideas
Right.
for a very, very long time, and they're all right. And then in Orthodoxy, you enter this world where you're making prostrations,
Mm.
you're setting stuff on fire, you're growing a beard, you're talking about uh, saints floating off the ground when they pray.
Mm.
You're talking about union with God, theosis. You're entering into this whole completely different world. It's it's easy. I mean, there's so much to be excited about. If there's no suffering in the heart, though, it can
Mm.
be a bunch of stuff to get excited about.
What do you mean by suffering in the heart? That's interesting.
You have to feel that this is life or death.
Mm.
I think. I mean, you can do what you want. I guess I'm talking about my getting through all these layers of abstraction, getting to the point of yeah, you're at the bottom of yourself, and you start to glimpse at how really dark it is. Like, you start to realize that you actually are dead.
Yeah. Oof.
I didn't want to go there for a really long time. Um, my my first exposure to Orthodoxy was at the end of high school, beginning of college. I mean, it's 20 years ago. I was reading Dostoevsky, Elder Zazima, geeking out about all that stuff. There's this whole Russian world, this whole other way of thinking and feeling. And I was in and out of churches for Orthodox churches for 10 years, in that post-college period. That the beauty of the liturgy, awesome, sign me up for that. The correct theology, yeah, I love being right. That's great. Sign me up for that. These cool people, I love them. But getting down to the heart and confronting the death inside, like, whenever it got to that, I was out of there.
Ah.
So So I was in and out for 10 years. And when I finally walked into my current church now, is on the Sunday of the prodigal son. And I walked in, I heard someone chanting the hours, and that in that moment I knew I was home and that I never wanted to leave ever again.
Wow.
And I told my priest after the liturgy, yeah, I want to be a catechumen. He thought I was crazy. Like, he's like, we'll see. I don't think he let me become a catechumen for months. But he didn't really know the whole backstory of. I mean, I've been reading books and attending churches for a long time, but
Right.
When something clicked before I showed up that time on the Sunday of the prodigal son. I had gone to a New Year's Eve party at my sister's apartment. And she said, "Hey, there's this guy, Justin, you should talk to him. He's becoming Orthodox. You know, I know you used to be interested in Orthodox." I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And so I was talking to this dude, he had massive beard, like truly epic, a beard with its own intelligence. It was
He's a
cool.
winner.
Really,
He's a
yeah.
winner.
I was just in awe of the beard, but I was trying to strike up conversation. Yeah, Orthodoxy, and then he was asking me, "Well, what's your deal?" And I was just going through this long thing of why I didn't become Orthodox, because this and that idea, and I had this almost out of body experience where I kind of saw myself talking, and it was all crap, you know. And I just stopped,
Interesting.
and I said, "Justin, should I become Orthodox?" And he said, "Yeah, you could." And something clicked in my heart, like, "Oh, I could. I don't have to. I could." There's like this freedom that opened up where I kind of went through all these ideas, and I walked into the church, and I had that freedom, and I wanted to finally to start to convert. That was 12 years ago.
Were you married then? Were you in a relationship? Were you doing this on your own?
I was doing that on my own. I met my now wife, shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So we were married in the Orthodox church.
She think you were weird?
Yeah. She was right. She still thinks I'm weird. But she she was a Lutheran, and she was pretty skeptical of all this stuff, and I was, super enthusiastic. I was going through one of my enthusiastic phases, and she had this slow, patient approach, and she told me, "I'm not going to convert unless God literally just tells me to convert." And I didn't even know you could do that. I'm like reading books, convincing myself, and going, and it took months, but there came a point where God literally told her, "Okay, convert." And she said,
All right.
"Okay." And she
Let's
did,
do
and
that.
she never went back.
Let's do that for a second. Okay. For skeptical friends like my dear friend Seth, who's coming on this week, by the way, if people like Seth, he's my atheist friend who comes on. He wants to know how your wife was spoken to. So you hear the mechanistic like framing of the question, right? How was she spoken to? Like, did the voice have candor? Like, did it have an irony to it? Was it not her voice? Let's just do that for a second. You're a writer. You can paint pictures for us in words. What do you think? It's not really relevant what actually happened to your wife, but what is the voice? What is that thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's not something you're going to replicate in some other, setup. Like the voice has this kind of tenor, and then you can pick it up on the mic later, and that's the same voice. Well, I don't,
How would
that's
she
just what my wife.
respond?
Yeah, I don't know. How about let me tell you this instead. because I don't want to speak for my wife. That's as much
Sure.
as she told me. And it's like these things you can't really put into words. Let me just switch gears to a parallel experience.
Sure.
That was my own experience, so I can talk about it. And
It's the same. It's the
it's
same.
still
I
not going
just
to help
want to
Seth.
investigate this voice thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So for 10 years, I went through these cycles of total enthusiasm, and then would drop and be cynicism and despair. And um, I was going through one of the low periods, and in particular during this period, I was just judging everybody at my parish. That guy's not serious. That guy's not serious. Look at that guy. This guy's definitely not serious. That guy's beard is cool, but it's a mask. He's not serious. He's just judging everybody. And it was a dark time, and one Sunday morning, for about half a second, out of the blue, it was like everybody's heads were on fire. And if you were to take a photograph of it, you wouldn't see that. But it wasn't my imagination. I know what my imagination feels like. And it was just a brief. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't like, everyone's full of the divine light and I should really accept that. It wasn't. It was just all of a sudden, bam, everybody's heads are on fire. It was like the burning bush. They were burning, but not getting burned up. And then that was it. And then the scales fell off my eyes. Like, these people are beautiful and they're doing their best, and everybody's just struggling on the Orthodox path, and they're wonderful and eternal and full of God, and I should stop judging them.
Wow.
So I don't know what I would say to Seth about that. I wasn't expecting that or asking for that. I guess it's something I needed.
Is it like an imprint?
I can't put it into words.
It's like an imprint. It was. I think of like when I get up from the couch, like my arm has the imprint of the couch. It's not as if I was aware of the experience. It's like left with me. So I can say a similar thing that happened to me, but without going all the way into it. My first time in Orthodox church, I was humiliated by a yaya, well, a matushka, and she was saying things to me that made me look suddenly at the iconostasis as a protection, because I was there to meet a woman and she was cute and I was yada yada. And she yelled at me to stand up and face forward. And in my humiliation, I suddenly was presented with the iconostasis in a way. It looked like do you know, like when you go to a Chinese restaurant, like in the Bronx, or I don't know, pick your neighborhood in Minneapolis, and there's all the food back there, but you got to like go through a window and talk to somebody. But you really want those delicious chicken wings to come out from the Chinese restaurant. This is how I used to eat in the Bronx. And people out there who know New York know what I'm talking about. That's what the iconostasis was. It was like suddenly this deep barrier to something delicious. And I don't know what that was. I didn't see fire. I saw like a wall. I saw almost like a guarded wall, like, Game of Thrones where they're guarding the wall against but I was the bad one. And they wouldn't let me get in. Now, I don't know is that the voice of God? I hear that as the voice of God. See, that's what I don't think people understand in the secular world. They're so attuned to the particular scientific narrative about voice, they actually keep thinking it's a voice. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, God's not an ego, not a big ego in the sky. In Orthodoxy, at least, we're taught that if you hear voices, don't listen to them. It's not a voice in your head.
Well, that's
voices
interesting.
In your head.
That's Graham. That's really interesting. Yeah, we're actually taught that's a problem, right? Wow, I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, and you've got good thoughts and bad thoughts and neutral thoughts, and it's like all thoughts are not it, man. It's like it's the heart. That's where it's all really happening. And so it's just this long process of, our consciousness starts out up here, and that's a sickness, and we're trying to make our way, down here. And I'm off camera now. My hand's pointing to my heart.
Right. Is the book, by the way, guys, The Sunlilies is his book. You probably already know about it, but if you don't, it's fascinating. Is the book, the writing of it, I'll use the word sacramental in the Orthodox sense. It's an infinite amount of sacraments, right? You're always participating with reality in creation. Is the book and the writing of it a way to get from the head, like you were pointing to, into the heart? Is that what happened with you when you're writing?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, the process of writing it was a process of getting down to my heart. Let me, yeah, and my hope is that because I went through that process and then crystallized the result of that other people can get to their heart faster.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, tell us about that. That's
cool. I mean, I think of it as poetry, something that's really stuck with me. You know, the Georgian poet James Dickey, not Georgia the state, not your Georgia.
Yeah, I was looking. Oh, I love his name. You mean Dickishvili?
Yeah. There's no James Dickey in your Georgia. I'm from Atlanta. I was born in Atlanta. My Georgia, James Dickey. He said, in high school, poetry was boring. He didn't get it. He could care less. But after high school, he had this realization that once you put words in a certain order, then they just stay that way. And so he got super interested in putting words in a certain order. I mean, even civilizations rise and fall. Mount Everest is going to be a beach one day. All these things undergo this flux, that breaks everything down. But once you get a poem right, you get those words in that order, it just stays that way. I thought of that as I was writing the book, that as I've struggled with orthodoxy, I have these little moments of insight, and then those can slip away and I can forget and get back into my funks and stuff. I wanted to capture all the little insights, crystallize them, and nail them down, put them on paper so they stay there. As kind of originally, just going to be an anchor for myself. When I get to my next funk, I'm just going to go back to what I just wrote and read it, and then the memories will be there. And it actually has really helped me. The book kind of reflects a lot of stuff I was trying to write for 10, maybe 15 years. And a lot of it was in my rebellious stages. But I got to a particularly low point in one of these down cycles. And this was a day, I don't know, it's like, it probably was May. It probably was a May, sunny, windy. And I kept pacing around. I was just caught up in all these thoughts, and I kept going down to this pond and sitting by these rocks and then going back up and walking around. And the last time I sat by these rocks, this wind just kind of blew right through me. This is going to sound super hokey. Seth is not going to like this. Seth, it was like this, man. I'm not making this up. I was just like all the swirl of thoughts. I went down there by this pond. And this is why I say I'm just a kumbaya nothing poet. You don't have to believe me, Seth. I was down at the pond, and this wind.
By the way, this is great. Don't
this
stop.
this wind blew right through me, and all these thoughts evaporated, and all these ideas that I was working on, literally in that moment, crystallized. They connected together, and then I just banged out Sunlilies over the next few weeks. Like, it just came, and then it was done. So
What is
it came
that?
out.
By the way, that's a pattern. It's a pattern in history when you study writers. What is going on there? Not that we can even say, let's try though. I think that's called revelation. And I don't know why you had it, but something's happening. And then the question is, will you participate? That's the question. Will you go and participate? Because I think all of us have that. The question is, will you go and sit down and write that down or embrace your loved one? Because I think I want you to go back to the story, but I think we've all had that moment where it's just like, oh my gosh, it's coming together. I have to go ask Jimmy for forgiveness because I see it now. I don't think it's any different than the revelation you had. But then most of us go like, yeah, maybe after dinner. And then it's 4 days later and you know what? It's finished. I didn't participate with the revelation, which is a real bitch, right? Because why can't the revelation just be enough? There's something being asked of you and you went and did it. Anyway, sorry. I just had that thought because it's fascinating, right?
Yeah. You got to just say yes to God as much as humanly possible. How do you get to the point where you're doing that? I think suffering is one way. I got to the point where I was just so tired of thinking the same things over and over and over again. I was just desperate to get out of these cycles in my head. I was thirsty and I knew I was thirsty.
Right.
But I don't know. God also felt sorry for me, I think, he knew I needed something.
But that's how the words broke onto the page. And then take us through just some writing chops. Why did you do it in this poetic fashion? You go back and forth between scripture and then your musings. And you also choose some interesting vocabulary. Adonai, Yeshua. What are you doing there? You explain a little bit about Yeshua, but you really stick to it. I found it different. I wouldn't call it that it confused me, but you made me, the reader, confront the word. And tell us a little bit why you use Yeshua and not Christ or Jesus. You do Christ, but why Jesus takes a back seat.
Well, and I say Yeshua. Some people say Yeshua, some people say Yeshua. I think Yeshua sounds better, and part of it just is
I think so too.
it's a beautiful sound, right? Yeshua. Part of it's that, I'm interested in poetry. I'm interested in how words sound. I'm really committed to making sounds in English, or in this case Hebrew. Translated into to English. I love that in English we have this sh sound. The Greek did not have this. So Yeshua was the name his mother gave him. If we're able to say that word, it's a gesture of personal. It's a personal gesture, to call somebody by their name, if you can. Some names are, depending on your linguistic background, some names are harder to pronounce. But thank God I speak English. We speak English. We have that sh sound that's lovely, so we can say Yeshua. The Greek didn't have that, so Jesus was about as good as they could do for Yeshua. That s sound at the end, that's the masculine nominative ending. So, and it kind of evolved from there into, you go from Yeshua to Jesus to Yesu to Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus kind of sounds like Yeshua. Jesus doesn't sound anything like Yeshua. And I don't think he has a problem with it, but if it's possible to call him by his name, then we can do it. But part of it, I would say large part of it is, people have all kinds of baggage attached to the name Jesus. They have all these conceptions.
Wow.
Part of what I want to do is just startle people out of these mental habits. Like, you might think you know who Jesus is, But if you're forced to encounter Yeshua, you might be open to hearing something different. That's my hope. I want to do that with a lot of words. I'm going, okay, this is straying from Sunlilies. We'll get back there maybe. But I'm working on versions of the Psalms on my Substack now, which, I don't know Hebrew, but it's fun to learn Hebrew. And I'm using Benner's lexicon, where he goes back to the ancient Hebrew pictographic language. It's more like hieroglyphics, and shows how all the words are related to their archaic roots. And my idea with these versions of the Psalms is to convey the same, like the faithfulness of the translation is just in conveying the same vivid mental imagery.
Right.
I'm being pretty loosey-goosey with verb tense, parts of speech, all that, but mental imagery, that's what I'll go for. So one of my discoveries in doing that, I think this was in Psalm 4, was the first time I encountered this word Hanan, which is usually translated like grace or mercy, which that's nice. I have a sister named Grace. That's a beautiful name. But literally nothing visually enters my mind when I hear the word grace. Maybe my sister. I imagine her shiny face. That's great, but not everybody has a sister named Grace. Grace.
That kind of proves the rule you're trying to.
Yeah, but grace, mercy, like I don't know. What does that mean? So the word though comes from, I learned from this lexicon. The word comes from. It means the way in which nomads would circle their tents around at night to create this protective space inside where you're at home, even though you're on the road. Which that, like, if I were to take a wild guess, what does grace really mean? I would never get to a circle of tents, but that image is
what you said. You're at home, even though you're on the road. This is it. This is grace.
Yeah, I mean, so like this is the Hebrew experience, like we're sojourning on planet Earth, and but if we're in the presence of God with each other in a circle, we're that's as much home as we need right now. So when I translated, I don't think it's quite a translation. When I did a version of that psalm, instead of "You've given me mercy," I said, "You've placed me within the beautiful circle of your tents, your hidden place of compassion and serenity." Now, that's like a sentence instead of a word, but that conveys that mental imagery. And it's like it gives you a fresh encounter with like what the heck the psalm is about. It's a way of encountering God. So I think in Sunlilies, I started this project of I just want new words for everything. So that I can freshly encounter everything.
Historically or philosophically, what do you think's brought you to this need for the new? I happen to agree with you. It's not really new, right? It's kind of a weird return to the old, but let's just call it new for the sake of this conversation. What's happened? Why must it be new? I mean, Billy Graham, why can't we just do what Billy Graham did? Like, what happened?
Wait, what did Billy Graham do?
Well, Billy Graham used all those words. I'm thinking of the classical Protestant. Thank you for clarifying my weird question. How did Billy Graham get into this? By the way, if there's one consistent critique of anything I'm doing on the internet, it's like, John, your thoughts are malformed.
Well, I mean,
that's my wife. She's like, why did Billy Graham get in there? Okay. Billy Graham, if you ever wanted Amazing Grace, or just there's a real long tradition of this word grace being really important in sort of the lexicon of Protestant Christianity. But you're sort of saying, I don't know, I might want to use circle around the wagons. What's happened? Why? I haven't. It's a leading question,
yeah,
but
no. I mean, so circling the wagons, give it a Western flair there. I like that. Americanize
By the way,
I like
I
that.
totally destroyed your poetry.
Circle
you should just hang up because this is terrible. I'm ruining
you. Yeah. All right. I'm going to do a Wild West version of Psalm 4 for you next time.
Daniel Boone.
How did I?
Oh, Lord. Will you
Yeah.
forgive me?
Part of it is because I'm a rebel. I went through all these phases I was talking about where I would get cynical and disgusted and judgmental, and I just kept reading books and reading books, trying to find something that would connect. Orthodox books. And I love you, everyone who wrote those books. You're amazing. Thank you. But I got really frustrated with how the language was more or less the same in every single book. It's very hard to find in English some really distinctive voices. Father John Romanides, he sounds like Father John Romanides and no one else. There's a few like that, but there's a kind of diction, there's a kind of rhythm that a lot of Orthodox books in English take on that didn't help me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like there's just yeah. So that was frustrating, and when I'd find someone like Father John Romanides, I would latch onto, Metropolitan Hierotheos.
Oh, great.
Great. Thank God for him. So there's a few distinctive voices out there, and that is when I encountered those guys that what they would say would penetrate all these layers of nonsense that I was swirling around in. So, but nobody quite spoke the language of my heart. So I wanted something that I could hold on to when I went through these phases, but it would have to be language that went directly to my heart. So I decided I had to write something directly from my heart.
Yeah. And you did.
Yeah. There's almost nothing there at all, but it's what I wanted to say.
Okay. I think a lot of the implications are something. This is what I'm really into right now. And I think people will see this in some of the events we're trying to do with First Things coming up. I'm really into this idea of hospitality as medicine. And then I'm really into the idea Lakos.
Yeah.
It's his language that broke through to me as a real early convert. Really, all of the Christian life, really, if you want to just say all of the truth, all of reality is about healing, which also implies some sort of original illness, which is really important, right? And that got to get things ordered right. And so when I hear you speaking about your writing, I'm hearing somebody talk about medicine. I really like that. I don't hear that as a Freudian, like, oh, he's trying to heal. Oh, it's not real. It's just real to him. I think all of us, and the church is the ultimate example of a doctor. We're all looking for a doctor. And to me, that your writing provides some sort of medicine. I'm really into the idea that hospitality, like you give us the words, but man, I want to give the food. And it comes out of my experience in Orthodox countries. They almost know nothing about how the Trinity operates, except for here's some really hot steaming food that I'll make for you again at any time that you need it. That seems like a Trinity right there. And I just love the idea of being healed as per our faith. And I see it over and over again manifest in different ways. And I think your writing is a type of healing. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely. And that third chapter, the communion of love, I try to really emphasize this aspect that you're talking about of table fellowship. Literally sitting down together, breaking bread together in the human body, which is a way of overcoming barriers, get a bunch of people who shouldn't be together, put them together at a table and let them eat food that is nourishing, flavorful, meaningful, from prepared from the heart. Those barriers are healed just by the act of eating. We are bodies, and eating is one of the most intimate things that we do, and we do it together.
Yes.
And that's
going inside of us. The food is entering us, not unlike sex. May it be for our healing, man. Think about that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Eucharist is obviously the center of the Christian life. There's a reason why Yeshua made this the center. This is my body. Eat this. Don't look at it. Don't think about it.
Right.
Eat it. It's got to go in you. And that's something we do together. You don't do that by yourself. You don't have a liturgy by yourself and just eat bread by yourself. That's not what it is, right? It's and so I tried to make a case in that third chapter. Like, different churches do different things. We call it a coffee hour after the liturgy. I'm like, don't call it the coffee hour. Call it the agape meal. And then make sure it is the agape meal. This is not something extra that we do after the liturgy. Like, okay, well, let's hang out now. This is the culmination of what we're doing. We go through the liturgy together. It harmonizes us with each other, with God. And then we go eat together.
This is, gosh, man. And so I've been Orthodox how many years? And do you know, even last Sunday, I left right after. I didn't even go to the meal. And shame on me. Isn't it interesting? Even when you know all the lessons, you still sort of want to default to something like an inherent desire. Innate there, think not good just because it's innate. It might be a bad thing that's innate. Yeah, you're helping me. You made me think of the importance of that agape meal. Yeah. Wow. And that's a little thing, right? That goes a long way in terms of becoming whole.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know how to communicate this. Yeah, this is what I'm working on my Substack now. I got this crazy 4-part series called The Gods of the Future Will Be Machines, but it's really like partly or largely me railing against digital screens, their infiltration into the Orthodox life. I talked about live streaming the liturgy as kind of an anti-communion, but one thing I haven't talked about yet is part of what makes the agape meal, or what should be the agape meal, difficult is, at least I don't know what your church is like. I imagine many churches are like this. It's like we get the liturgy over with and then rush downstairs, and it's like, okay, I can be on my phone again. And that disrupts communion. We've kind of lost. I think if we're breaking bread together and being intentional about making eye contact and sharing our lives with each other. You remember that when people used to sit down?
For sure.
How was your day? Like just basic stuff, which generations of people are growing up like they don't even know what that is. Like make eye contact and really listen. I think that's a continuation of the liturgy, or it could be, or should be.
Okay, if guys have been listening to the podcast lately, I don't know, I can't get away from this idea. I think what you just described, the inability to do that, which I participate in, so this is not judgment. Well, it's judgment, but of all of us. I think that's actually the outcome. It's the result of a type of anthropology being taught and imbibed by us Westerners for 300 years. And it's the anthropology that what I sit in front of at Trapeza is a slab of meat, sort of, that came up out of the goop and is destined for the ground. What I mean by that is there's nothing unique about you that makes me, or that moves me toward you in a unique way, as if I was communing with eternity. I'm actually taught it's not that. And I mean me. Like I took that in for 20 years, studying what a human being is. And so I think it's really important that every one of us listening should go right now to the school district or to whoever district that and ask, what is a human being and how do you teach it in your school? Good luck, by the way. First of all, they'll think you're crazy, but think of the question though, Graham. What's a human being? Because every implication about life is going to come out of that answer. And shame on me for not even recognizing within the corridors of my own temple. What a disaster. And I left in order to, I forget what I was running in errands or some garbage. I left in order to do my thing, and I left people with their heads on fire. I left the vision that you had of people with their heads on fire. In other words, people communing with God. Think about that. And I think that's the outcome of a type of cultural, I don't know, education. We got to stop. We got to stop telling little people that that's what we are. That's why I'm so on this evolution train. Evolution as an anthropology is disastrous, like atomic bomb disastrous. What do you think about that? Disaster.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the ideology of evolution, I'm with you there. The we are nothing but kind of train of thought. I I think I think there is something redeemable about that line of discovery, which is there's a way in which our bodies are connected with the bodies of everything else in the world. That's the little thing that I want to keep from evolution, not the we're pond scum and we're just random, accidental, complex and kind of nice assemblies of atoms, but it could have gone a completely different way. Like that's nonsense. But the idea that our bodies are all connected to each other, I love that. That seems to be in line with this idea of communion. I went on this long tirade on my last essay about when Yeshua said, "This is my body." When he said that about the bread had a pretty different meaning than it has today. Then people knew directly from direct experience that bread is a kind of grass. It's coming out of the ground. That the seeds of that grass are knocked off the grass and then ground up by hand, and you bake it by hand in clay ovens that you form by hand. And our bodies are from the ground, that Genesis says. So we're like these mud people, touching the mud, touching the grass, eating it, becoming it. And Yeshua saying, like, this is my body. He's uniting himself to this whole this web of all these this web of relationships. So I want to keep that part of evolution. But certainly, like, we're nothing but, and I've been talking about transhumanism. I would say that anthropology has morphed into, not only are we pond scum, just like anything else, but it's more that everything is computation.
Yeah.
Everything is just bits moving around. Sometimes those bits look like trees. Sometimes they look like John. Sometimes they look like Graham. But they're it's just bits moving around, and I think that plays into this screen consciousness that kind of infiltrates itself. Like, hey, these bits can be represented here on the screen or whatever. It's all different layers of the same kind of reality. So
that's the floating. You said something really interesting when we were talking before the recording. It's like we're floating away from ourselves. It's it's like there's something about our pixelation that separates us from obviously an incarnate existence. And so your writing takes that on. I know you've been, and that's why we get to the idea that maybe we shouldn't pixelate or whatever the word is in the data world, in the tech world. We shouldn't do that to liturgy, right? We should not do that, but we're
Yeah,
doing.
liturgy. Yeah, I said it. It makes no sense to celebrate the incarnation of God while collaborating with the disincarnation of ourselves. Um, yeah, the liturgy is something you do in the body. You don't have access to the liturgy through the internet. You have access through your human body, which is an image of God.
Mm.
It's the body is a manifestation, a revelation of God. You know, we all have our heads on fire. We're just blind to it. And yeah, I think we should take that very seriously. Let's come in our bodies and gather in our bodies to do the liturgy, and then let's take the meal seriously too. This is divine human, like divine human communion in the body. We're gathered together. We're the images of God to one another and for one another, and we consume the world as we eat. We're eating the world that God made.
Yeah.
For us, and we shape that world for each other, and we do that. It is intimate.
Okay, but I'll push back.
Great.
I'll
I'll drink more coffee.
All right, good. You drink your coffee. I finished mine. I'm hyped. I'm hyped. um, you're a Luddite. What a
Awesome.
Luddite, dude. You're such a Luddite. Like, catch up, man. Let's go. What do you say to that? Come on, man.
Well, yeah, Luddites put monkey wrenches in um, factory machinery. I'm not doing that yet.
Actually, you're on the internet right now.
Thank God for the internet, man. I love the internet.
Well, because is it something about the hierarchy? There's something of liturgy is different than what we're doing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm all for um, representation of reality and asynchronous communication. I mean, you know, I write, so I represent my state of mind. I represent the world. I represent the state of my heart in black symbols on a white page,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
I try to transmit that to other minds. I think there's a place for that. I don't think there's an ultimate place for that necessarily. I don't think I'll be, you know, in the kingdom of God in its fullness. I don't, if I'm still writing books, that's that's a problem. I
That'd
mean,
be
you
interesting.
know, I hope not. You know, it's a means to an end. It's medicine. Um, actually, Plato literally called it uh, the technology of writing. He called it a pharmacon, which we get the word pharmacy. You know,
Yeah.
it's a poison that is medicine if used in the right amount at the right time. And yeah, I'm delighted to have this conversation with you. I'm glad we can do it, even though we're not bodily present. This is a conversation though, and it's not perfect. Um, there's some body language stuff that doesn't come through. There's
100%.
you know,
This would
there's
be
some
better like over a cigar or whatever, like sitting next to each other. It would be better. We can
yeah,
say that, right? Yeah.
yeah, but it's pretty good, you know. Um, the liturgy is something entirely other. You know, the union of God and man in this dance that connects with the way the whole universe is moving. It's something totally transcendent and earthy and bodily at the same time. So I think we want to say the liturgy is a sacred space that we don't violate with our simulation technologies. We can let's have conversations with each other. Let's go on podcasts. Let's do that. That's great. Thank God. You know, let's use that technology while we have it. But the liturgy, let's keep it sacred.
Yeah. It used to be, and I had this conversation, and it was really a running debate with my brother um, for a number of years, which is when you hear what the debate was, you'll find it ironic, I promise. Is there was an argument in our household with my mother and father and us that something like television as a techne, as a medium itself is irredeemable. Because the pixelation, the distance between the reality of what's being created and my own imbibing of it, all that, right? It never sat well with me. It sat okay with my brother. And that was the debate. And I think what I love about Orthodoxy, that was pre-Orthodox, is that, you know, there's layers on a continuum of reality. Is you can be right and be really far from the center of goodness and still be right on one layer, right? You can say that the internet's not really good and participate in it at the same time, as long as the awareness is there, that you know that you're at this point on the continuum. You don't want to confuse the point, right? If you're trying to go, 50 miles an hour and you keep calling 20 miles an hour proper, that's the problem. But if you know you're going 20, you can get to where you got to go. And what I like in Orthodoxy is it doesn't have that Puritan, this, not that. At the same time, it's a danger, right? Because you can get lost. You can get lost. And I think my brother is the guy who's he's really trying to put up the fences all the time. Don't go over there. It's not proper to me. I don't like fences. You know what I mean? Like I'll go over there and then get hit in the head and come back. And then I'll tell you, yeah, maybe. And I find your writing it's an invitation to all the beauty but no, it's cool. It's not a lot of fences. I don't know. It's very inviting writing. And I get why you wouldn't want to encourage liturgy online and still be able to do this. I really understand that. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, we have this Neoplatonic framework that helps out a lot. It took me a long time to realize, but now I realize and accept it that, there's the archetypes embody themselves at lower levels as images, which are then archetypes for other images. And, you've got this scale or this gradient, and yeah, there's different levels of reality. And yeah, what we're doing right now is pretty far down on that scale as far as like communion with another human being, but it's on the scale.
Yeah.
It's not off the scale. It's not all or nothing. But yeah, you have to be aware of where you are. Yeah, I appreciate what your brother said about you got to put up fences, but the point of the fence is the life inside the house that you're protecting with the fence.
That's
like,
right.
He said that right. Yeah. Like you gotta live inside the house. So I think Sunlilies is pretty groovy. It's pretty relaxed. I'm glad to hear you say is welcoming. I thought maybe some non-Orthodox people would get something out of it too, even non-religious people. It offers a way to engage a little bit without getting caught up in maybe all of the political stuff. And it sounds like that's been true, that non-Orthodox people, even non-religious people, have gotten something out of it. So I'm glad
real.
about that.
It's real.
Yeah.
The book's a real beautiful offering. Let's end with this question. You got kids. You got a beautiful family. What do you hope for in the next? Let's just say you live sort of like what a human life looks like. I don't know. You die when you get old. What do you hope to see? Writers help us to see things. What do you hope to see for this country we live in or this world we live in by the time that you're ready to go?
What I would really love is for gardening to be as part of Orthodoxy as prayer is, for Orthodoxy to be as unthinkable, for gardening to be as unthinkable in Orthodoxy as Orthodoxy without gardening would be as unthinkable as Orthodoxy without prayer.
Wow.
I would love for us to get really serious about the Eucharistic life, are celebrating the liturgy together in the body, and our agape meals, providing food for each other out of our own gardens, and surrounding our churches with gardens, and surrounding our homes with gardens, and making our homes temples in which we can pray and also garden. That's kind of my big dream, which I just described in my crazy essay, the Lily Archipelago. That's what I would love. We're building a house in the woods. We got 40 acres of land up north, building a tiny little timber frame house. Got a chapel out there in the forest. Our priest friend of ours from up north comes and celebrates the liturgies. I'm hoping to embody this vision I have there in a place where I, God willing, I'll have freedom to do whatever the heck I want, to like implement that kind of reality. And I hope my children will be able to keep that going.
That, Graham, that's great. That is a great, I wouldn't even call it a curveball, but it's beautiful. Unfortunately, the last time I was in a garden was when I was doing this work in Africa, because those cats all have gardens. And it was beautiful. And also it was the coolest place. By that I mean it was cool. It was the temperature was lower. And in the Sahel in West Africa, that was a really nice place to be. And it did help me remember beauty. Yeah. When you said garden, I was reminded of those days. Yeah.
The temple dropped 10 or 20 degrees in a garden like that. You know about the church forests in Ethiopia?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that's the future.
Wow.
Churches surrounded by forests, that's it. That's Eden.
You may have literally in a sentence explained where we should go. Yeah, because you don't have to know the rest. I don't know how that happens, but if that happens, why not? Yeah, that's beautiful. By the way, it's also possible. I like possible and beautiful. Some of these cats, they're talking about the future. You're like, what? Are we sure that you could even what? Yeah, like if I see one more person go to space, oh my God. Don't you think it's just some new billionaire is going to space? It's insane.
Let them go, man. Just don't come back.
Just let them go. Let them go. Space is the most incomprehensible, devilish of all of our desires. Let's go where you can't breathe. I don't understand. It just blows me away.
I used to teach at a residential treatment center. It's like these drug addicted gang guys with mental health issues and stuff, and it was out on a lake in Wisconsin. It's like kind of a wilderness therapy thing. But this one guy, man, I loved him. He loved to eat. He was cool, real simple guy. I was supposed to be their teacher or something. I was doing I played a video on well, it got kind of crazy, but I think I played like some astronomy documentary or something really boring, and this guy was like, space sucks.
Did you say that?
I was like, what? But now I get it, man. Yeah, space sucks. I don't want to go there. Earth. Grow a garden, man. That's not asking too much.
That's your garden conversation made me think of it's literally the opposite idea. And yet we keep wanting to go. It's such a demonic image. It's just odd, but that's not our next podcast. How about that? Okay, here's Sunlilies, guys. But Andrew will put a link to it. Graham, we have a new rule on our dumb podcast. It's really a foil, for trying to get people to love our work overseas and here at home. At First Things, but we have a new rule. It was given to me by Andrew, our editor. And the new rule is we can only bring people on that are like super cool and connected and did something that will go across the interwebs. So you're our first test of the new rule. That's how cool you are.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
I say that with tongue in cheek, but not really, because it's really beautiful stuff you're working on. Keep writing, guys. Check out his Substack. Is there something you want to, what are you working on right now? You said it, but say it again.
Yeah, the Substack is Sabbath Empire. I just dropped the third part of a 4-part series called The Gods of the Future Will Be Machines, and this third part is called the Lily Archipelago. That kind of presents that garden vision within the context of fighting against transhumanism.
Yeah. Let's come back and let's talk about that in a couple months. Want to? I would.
God willing. Yeah, sounds good.
I would. I think it's relevant. And I don't think it's one of those internet cries for attention. I actually think it's relevant. We should discuss stuff like that. So, okay. We will catch up again, and I hope to see you. I got invited back by St. Thomas Catholic cats out there to come back and talk. So I'll try to bump into you guys again. Your parish
sounds good.
Yeah.
Hey, and I just want to tell Seth, we were having major connection issues before we started this podcast, and we just said, oh Lord bless, and it was fine.
We actually did do that.
Yeah, no, it's a true story.
And I actually was ready to not even do the recording. That's how bad it was. We couldn't get any leverage. Seth, get ready, buddy. Just a matter of that dude. I love that dude. He's coming on this week, so I'll tell him that Graham and I had a moment. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Peace to you, brother.
All right. Thank you. See you, man.
Guys, check out Graham. Check out Sunlilies. Check out his Substack. Andrew's got it all in the links. www.first-things.org. That's why this podcast exists. Support our guys in the field. Support our podcast by tuning back in, hitting like and love. Please, and also travel with us. Lots going on. Check it out online and look for a new invitation coming out the first week in June to join us in the Florida Keys for the Art of the Tamada. This is WAWTAR. You've been listening to our podcast from First Things Foundation. Peace out.